Hall of Famer Rebecco Lobo, ESPN college basketball analyst, kind enough to join us here now. Good morning, Rebecca. I'm sure this has got to be like a holiday for you, even though it is technically a holiday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. You remembered to wear green, I see.
I'm wearing my green for St. Patrick's Day, and yes, we love this day. It's exciting. Let's get this tournament started already.
Yeah, it is a great time of year, and we need the tournament to get started. And Rebecca, we need help from you. So I will start at the treetops before we get to our personal complaint here. But looking in the women's bracket here, the number 1 seeds in the tournament, South Carolina, USC, Texas, and UCLA getting the number 1 overall seed. Was there any surprise in that one for the Bruins that have been great all year long, but I felt like maybe not respected in the same ways that South Carolina, USC, and some others had been along the way?
Yeah, I think there was surprise that South Carolina wasn't the number 1 overall seed just because their strength of schedule was ridiculous. And the committee kept pointing to a couple things with South Carolina. One, their 29-point loss to UConn at home a few weeks ago. And then the head-to-head matchup that was played back in November where UCLA was able to beat South Carolina in Westwood. But I think a lot of people thought, based on the strength of South Carolina's schedule, how well they were playing. They were absolutely dominant throughout the course of their SEC tournament. The expectation was that South Carolina would get that number 1 overall. That being said, if you're a South Carolina fan, you should be really happy and pleased with their bracket. To have Duke as your 2 seed, which was a surprise. I think people expected Duke to be a 3 seed, but we'll talk about that later, I'm sure, when we talk the Notre Dame women. But if you're looking at South Carolina's bracket, you're thinking they have a really friendly path to getting to the Final Four, especially considering they're in Birmingham, and how much, if they do make it to the Final Four, how much easier that travel is than anyone who has to come from Spokane.
Oh, yes, we will get to Notre Dame in a bit. So as far as the path for South Carolina, what do you say about the path for USC? I mean, they would have to get out of that region. They'd have to play UConn. Now they beat UConn in December, I think 72-70. It was a close game. Both Juju Watkins and Paige Beckers had good games. But UConn seems to really be hitting their stride now.
This was, frankly, the biggest surprise to me when I saw the bracket, and sort of the biggest disappointment. Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins are the 2 biggest stars in women's college basketball. We do have other big stars, Hannah Hidalgo, Mylasia Fulwiley, Madison Booker. However, the 2 biggest are Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins. And the notion that one of them for sure will not be in the Final Four is certainly disappointing. You also have to look, Mike, that this is the matchup that happened in last year's regional final out in Seattle. UConn beat USC last year to make it to the Final Four. I think the expectation was that USC would be the 3rd number 1, Texas the 4th number 1, and then Texas would end up aligned with UConn. So it was a massive surprise when we got the bracket to see that this matchup between USC and UConn that everyone wants to see might just happen a little bit earlier. And yeah, I mean, it was a great game when they played in December. But UConn has been to 15 of the last 16 Final Fours. Last year, they made it as a 3 seed. A couple of years ago, they made it as a 2 seed. They are always going to be a tough out. And so if I'm a USC fan, I am not happy about that at all.
Whether you call it soccer, football, or something else, you could take a shot to win cash with Heineken and DraftKings while watching the world's most popular sport. Make predictions on some of the biggest matches of the year and compete for $5,000 a contest in 15 free pools. Heineken is a lager for any league, and you'll enjoy action from the first to the last. That was nice. Must be 21 or over to enter. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com/Heineken for details. You mentioned UConn always a tough out. Seemed to get even tougher down the home stretch of the season, starting with that emphatic win against South Carolina. What's made UConn such a different threat now as we close in on this tournament in March?
I think that, the pieces are just coming together. And one of the big differences with UConn this year and previous years is they have a lot of healthy pieces. They've been decimated by injury the past couple of years. And maybe the week before they lost, the week before they beat South Carolina, they lost to Tennessee in a game that they could have won. And it felt like there were times this season against Notre Dame, against USC as well, where they were close but weren't quite there. And it's just a team that feels like it's really grown. Paige Beckers is taking a little bit more of the responsibility on her shoulders when the opponents go on runs. Azzi Fudd in that South Carolina game was absolutely stellar. So I think it's just taken a little bit of time, but certainly UConn is playing their best basketball of the season too. And just Geno Auriemma has proven year after year, he knows how to prepare his teams for this time of year. And that's one of the things he told us before the Tennessee game. He said it again before they played South Carolina. He said, we are going to be a really tough out in March. And they're certainly on the right trajectory for that.
Well, going to the opposite of Mike and I's team, Notre Dame, of not playing their best ball right now. After Notre Dame, I think, had a 22-game winning streak, they lost 3 of their last 5. Everybody thought they'd fall to the 2 line. They fell to the 3 line, and they were one of the few schools not on the selection show camera. They weren't all together. I think they're all ticked off about the way they were playing as of late. But were you surprised they dropped to the 3 line?
I was surprised that they dropped to 3, and I understand. They haven't been playing their best basketball the last couple of weeks of the season. You point out they lost 3 of their last 5. The difference, however, between Notre Dame and the rest of the 3 seeds and Notre Dame and some of the 2 seeds is that Notre Dame in December and January was the best team in the country. Hannah Hidalgo in the stretch of December to January was the front runner for National Player of the Year. We haven't seen any other lower 2 seeds or 3 seeds at any point this season look like the best team in the country. And so does Notre Dame kind of have to get their mojo back? Do they have to figure out their efficiency again, especially in their backcourt with Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles? Yes. But also when Hidalgo, Miles, and Sonia Citron are playing at the top of their game, they're the best backcourt trio in the country. And so that's the thing with Notre Dame, that they are so dangerous when they're playing well. And while you don't expect them to be a 3 seed, when you look at their bracket, you're like, all right, so the 2 seed is TCU, a team that beat Notre Dame back in one of the Island tournaments back in November, but in a game where Notre Dame had a lead. That's certainly a game Notre Dame can win. And then their 1 seed is Texas, a team that they've already beaten this year. So if you're Notre Dame, you're thinking, all right, if we get back to playing the way we did when we looked like the best team in the country, we certainly do have a path that we can see that puts us in Tampa for the Final Four.